Jictrix shook their head in bemusement as they looked across the break room table at their human coworker. You know, I still don't understand how you can stand to work within 40 meters of him, much less in the same cubicle. The human looked up from their sandwich to meet the three-eyed stare of their Lumagog-1 coworker. One a race of chitin-covered humanoids with trinocular vision, long, sharp claws on the hands and feet, and bioluminescent algae nodules on the face and chest that aid in displaying what emotion they are feeling. You mean Raltok? What about him? He just needs a few accommodations here and there. Not a big deal. Jictrix warily glanced at a diamond glass window in a currently unoccupied portion of the break room that has been cordoned off and hermetically sealed. The only thing that could keep them safe from the fumes of the coworker that was now the subject of their discussion. I wouldn't consider needing full hazmat equipment to prevent your death as a few accommodations here and there. The human casually shrugged a shoulder that was currently covered by said hazmat suit. Agree to disagree. The Lumagogs steepled their fingers. Listen, Chesley, you know, that Bitus manager from HR. She asked me to talk to you about this. The human let out an exasperated huff. Oh, come on. Now she's trying to get to me through you? I already told her. I'm perfectly fine where I am. Just because he's a Saren Site 2 doesn't mean he should be completely isolated. 2. If one is unfamiliar with Saren Sites, picture a bipedal, 3-meter-tall porcupine with a face not unlike an anglerfish, with pitch-black eyes and needle-like teeth. Their biology necessitates an environment full of large quantities of what most other spacefaring species consider deadly neurotoxins, resulting in them typically being ostracized by most of the other sapient inhabitants of the galaxy. She's just scared about your situation, okay? She's even considering reassigning you to another department entirely. I mean, if that suit ruptures, you'd be breathing in deadly neurotoxins produced in his lung sacs. Neurotoxins that tell your heart to stop beating, your brain to turn off, that said organs then listen to. That doesn't worry you? Not really. I check the suit for leaks daily and have multiple redundant built-in sensors and alarms that notify me of any changes in air pressure. So you can tell her to stuff that reassignment. I'm fine where I am. That won't help you if he punctures it himself with the barbed quills. Males of his species are coated in even higher concentrations of those neurotoxins. Hey, it's cool. He makes a point of keeping a healthy social distance at work, and I don't touch him that often off the clock. Jictrix almost choked on her nutrient bar. You willingly touch him. Just when he asks. What? Hey, don't judge. The dude's super lonely. No one else here wants to work anywhere near him, much less talk to him. He's the only one of his species working within 5 light years of this place, and he's touch-starved as heck. Basically, I just don't want him to get even more depressed than he already is. Jictrix's eyes narrowed. He's depressed? The human winced. That slipped out. I shouldn't have said it. Just pretend you didn't hear it, okay? Okay. There was a brief silence before the Lumagog broke it with an awkward cough. So, when you say touch, do you mean, Jictrix trailed off, the bioluminescent nodules lining her chitin-covered face shifting to an embarrassed orange. The human laughed and shook their head. No. Nothing like that. So, what did you mean? Nothing much. We just cuddle. You know, platonically. Jictrix's 3 eyes blinked several times as she processed what she just heard before she hazarded answering. I see. Yeah, he was super nervous and embarrassed the first time he asked, but I was cool with it. Now it's a semi-regular thing. But how? Carpet suit. What? The human got up and moved to their locker for a moment. When they returned, they were holding up a clearly homemade set of body coverings made entirely of thick, crudely stitched together shag carpeting attached to a hazmat helmet and oxygen tank. They met the Xeno's baffled expression with a smile. See? Carpet suit. But don't worry, it's not nearly as itchy as it looks. This was not the source of Jictrix's confusion and concern, but she decided correcting the human wasn't worth the effort. Right then. Well, even putting aside the neurotoxins, he's over 3 meters tall, and I've seen his species bend industrial titanium I-beams with their bare hands. So how? Don't worry, we thought of that too. I'm Big Spoon. What? What does that even mean? The only real danger I'm in is if he falls asleep and rolls over on top of me. Which, Honestly, that would be a pretty cute way to go out. So I wouldn't even be that mad, Atto. Speak of the devil. Jickthrix turned to see Raltok standing behind the diamond glass window across the room. He awkwardly waved at the human with one of his clawed hands, but the human's face was troubled as they returned the wave. Jickthrix glanced at them, cocking her head to the side in confusion. What's wrong? I don't know. He just looks super upset about something. Jickthrix, belonging to a species that communicated emotions entirely by their bioluminescence glowing different colors, was no expert on emotional language used by many species, so she decided to just take the human's word for it. As the duo watched, the towering Xeno raised a piece of musculature on his chest to reveal a bioluminescent bulb-like organ nestled in a cavity of cartilage, and looked at the human expectantly. If anything, the confused angle of Jickthrix's neck became even more acute. What's he doing? What? You've never had a conversation with the guy before. Male Sarencytes don't have vocal cords to better serve their role as ambush predators by keeping quiet, so they work with what they have. I don't know the exact biological mechanisms behind it, but they have an entire language built around something similar to your glowing algae nodules. For you, it's as simple as glowing blue if you're lying, or green if you're peeved, and so on. But for him, well, just watch. With that, the human pulled out a small flashlight and hooked it into their wrist-mounted computer. They raised their wrist, pointed the computer at the alien behind the glass, and gestured between themselves and Jickthrix, to which the Sarencyte hesitantly nodded in understanding that the contents of the conversation would be shared with the Lumagog. Then, the bulb-like organ on his chest began glowing more intensely, shifting between several different colors, creating a colorful and downright mesmerizing light show. When he finished, the human beckoned Jickthrix to look at their computer as they set it to display both human English and Jickthrix's native language. Curious, the Lumagog peered over their shoulder at the screen. They have once again denied / refused / dismissed my friend / associate / loved one's application to work here. Too costly / difficult / overtaxing and dangerous / risky / hazardous to have a second Sarencyte / individual / outcast here for the moment / time / foreseeable future. The human's face fell. Ah man. The Sarencyte began to glow again, continuing the linguistic light show. When he finished, the Lumagog began reading again, and what she saw disturbed her. Bitus 3 manager / above coworker / liar, Shesla, said they are working on it and intend to expand / rework / invest the facilities before it can happen. But I saw / witnessed / snuck look at her terminal from behind my containment / death prevention / prison across the room. I have been learning how to read Bitus standard to surprise / please / familiarize her, but it was I who ended up surprised / shocked / distressed. Management have no intentions of actually doing any more changes. Want me to get so lonely / solitary / miserable I leave / run / flee, so they can remove / undo / destroy changes to the facility. Hiring me was just to retain goodwill / acclaim / PR between them and my species. In reality, they only want normal / preferential / non-Sarencytes people here, so they don't have to deal with my people / Sarencytes / pariahs. 3A Xeno species resembling large snakes with arms that are nonetheless warm-blooded. The human's expression darkened with anger in sharp contrast to the dim glow of the Sarencyte's light playing across their face. Oh, that manipulative. Thought manager / overseer / betrayer Shesla was friend / reliable / ally. Smiled at me a lot. Said she appreciated my presence and hard work. Lies / untruths / trust betrayals. Jickthrix looked up from the computer and saw that purple tears, not unlike certain brands of cough syrup she had seen humans drink when they were ill, were now slowly dripping from the Sarencyte's bulbous black eyes. The human began typing, and when they hit the submit button, the flashlight in their hand began to shift through various colors in response. Did you take any pictures of what you saw? The Sarencyte nodded as they glowed their response from behind the glass. Yes / affirmative / indeed. But she was communicating / messaging / light talking to upper management. Orders from above to keep more Sarencytes / people / unwanted out of company. I don't know how far up this goes. This is the only job / task / income I've managed to get in almost a cycle, And it took a lot of prodding / encouraging / pleading from the Sarensite / people / undesirable embassy in this sector for me to get it. Raltok gently wiped some of the tears from his face with his clawed hands, but they were swiftly replaced as he let out one final, dim flash of light, like a weak candle flame being lit and snuffed out within a moment in a strong breeze. I don't know what to do. It was then that the human felt a tug on their sleeve. They looked up to see Jickthrix gazing at them with a grim, determined expression on a face that was lit with a strong green glow from her algal nodules. She gestured towards the computer. "May I speak with him? May my colleague here talk with you?" Raltok glanced at Jickthrix before replying, the light of his bioluminescent organs still weak. "The Lumagog / light feeler / truth bound? Affirmative / acquiesce / okay. At least she can't lie / untruth / word betray to me without me knowing it." The Lumagog began typing. "Send me the pictures. I have a friend who's on this sector's labor board. Say can rip this weed out by the roots." Raltok's jaw dropped open in surprise for a moment, but his needle-like teeth were swiftly covered again as he replied. "I would appreciate / grateful / thank you that." "As would I," the human added. "My only regret is that it won't be me personally sticking it to those jerks." When the human was handed back the computer, there was a brief silence before Raltok began light speaking once more. "Could you please / request / beg, come over to my quarters / nest / safe place again tonight? I'm feeling very sad / depressed / broken / angry / bitter / fury / betrayed / hurt / despair / ashamed / self-loathe / why does this always happen?" Jickthrix could see the spines along the Sarensite's body ripple as they began letting out silent sobs. The human swiftly replied, "Duck it, let's just clock out now. I have PTO to burn, and once the labor board gets involved, they can just dub this as temporary paid leave for the sake of your mental health. You need some ice cream, cuddles, and a nap, not necessarily in that order, but definitely ASAP." Affirmative / acquiesce / okay. The human turned to leave, but Raltok let out a few more brief flashes as his sobbing petered out. "Appreciation / grateful / thank you for treating me like any other person / individual / non-Sarensite. I may have left / ran / fled months ago if not for your kindness." The human smiled as they typed out a reply. "Anytime, dude." With that, they grabbed their shag carpet hazmat creation and started off at a trot towards the building's exit. As they went, Jickthrix began furiously typing a message in the outgoing mail section of her wrist computer, occasionally glaring in the general direction of the HR department. He may inadvertently poison the air, but at least he hasn't poured poison directly into my ears to try and make me the tool of your biases, you lying. As Jickthrix continued to angrily mutter to herself, she finished the message, attached the images, and sent them with a malicious smile that simply oozed righteous anger. 20 minutes later, Jickthrix received a knock on her office door. She glanced up and was surprised to see Shesla in the doorway, but smothered her anger before it showed on her bioluminescence as the Bitus began to speak. "You're the IT specialist in this branch, right? My terminal isn't accepting my login, and it's giving me some strange error message." Internally, Jickthrix was cackling in a fashion befitting a supervillain from ancient Terran television programs or comic books. Externally, she merely got up and followed the Bitus to her desk, where she saw a small flashing message in the center of the screen. "Terminal lockout in place. Protocol A15791265. Jickthrix didn't even have to look up what the code meant. She had spent the last 20 minutes researching what the most likely outcomes to the situation were on her personal computer, and had made a point to memorize this code in advance. Looks like your terminal was remotely locked by the local authorities." Shesla's eyes widened. "What?" "I recognize the code from an article I read recently. Certain independent investigation bodies in this sector think stuff like the local labor board, that sort of thing, have the power to lock out and remotely download terminal data from corporate networks to prevent the possibility of erasure of evidence. No, there has to be some kind of mistake. Doubt it. From what I read, they only ever do this if they have absolute proof of a crime having been committed. If it's any consolation, it's heavily regulated and overseen by even more regulatory bodies to prevent corporate espionage, and once the investigation is concluded, all non-evidence-related documents are discarded from the authority servers. Jickthrix smiled. Time to twist the knife. So as long as you're not personally wrapped up in whatever's going on, you should have nothing to worry about. Shesla continued stammering for a few moments, but eventually stopped and took a deep breath. Thank you for your time. If you'll excuse me, I have to make a few calls. Jickthrix glanced down at her personal computer as she received several new notifications, rapid fire. Those calls wouldn't happen to be to Mrinshis, Macready, Young Dro, and Revlikin, would they? Shesla stopped and stared at Jickthrix in surprise. How did you? Just received requests to head to their terminals too. Odd. That's 4 of the 10 executives in charge of this branch. Jickthrix looked back up to meet Shesla's gaze, and it was all she could do to keep herself from grinning as she saw the Bitus fighting off panic. She allowed herself the tiniest of smiles. Yeah, why not? A few more twists of the proverbial knife never hurt anyone. Or at least not the one holding it. Are you personally wrapped up in whatever's going on? Shesla's scale-covered lips tightened into a thin line as she glared at the Lumagog, who was presently glowing a cheery yellow of amusement in front of her. I'm quite sure I have no idea what you're referring to. Jickthrix made no attempt to hide the skepticism in her voice as she replied, turning to leave as she went. If you say so. Well, if you'll excuse me, it seems I have a few more terminals to have a look at, are you? Jickthrix glanced over her shoulder. HM? Are you responsible for this? Shesla gestured towards her terminal, giving Jickthrix a vicious smile. Everyone knew Lumagogs couldn't lie without it being immediately obvious, and her playful air surrounding this had clearly raised Shelsa's suspicions. But Jickthrix just smiled. No, she said, and her bioluminescence confirmed it was the truth as she turned and kept walking. No, I'm not responsible, she thought to herself. The human is, by making sure Raltok stuck around long enough for it to get to this point. On the way towards what was presumably the next guilty party, she paused for a moment as a thought struck her. Why not? She opened a new search tab on her computer and began typing as she walked. Nearest store selling shag carpet.